Howdy there, folks, and welcome to the Bullets4Bucks live show. I'm joined here, I'll bring him up here in just a second, by Mark Kayser. Hopefully I'm saying the last name right.
Exactly.
I guess he's been a host on a whole bunch of different television shows, hunting shows. I guess you are a host with Deer and Deer Hunting. He's also written articles for, I believe, what is it, Outdoor? Is it Outdoor Life? Or I guess, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I write for anybody that'll pay me, but I'm a field editor for American Hunter, the NRA publication. So if you're getting American Rifleman, you're not getting American Hunter. And that's the one I'm in almost every issue. But I also write for Bow Hunting World, Predator Extreme, North American Elk, Predator Nation, National Wild Turkey Federation, the Mule Deer Foundation, Bow Hunter, Game and Fish West. Just I could go on. But I write for a lot of publications because that's how I pay the bills. So I'm a wordsmith when I'm not out in the field.
And I saw you were like you were the host of Xtreme Hunts and some other, and I guess maybe on Beretta TV or something. I was just looking at your bio the other day. Is that true?
I've been a host of quite a few shows. Extreme Pursuits. I've been the host of Truck Vault, Xtreme Hunts. I did a ton of stuff for North American Hunter back when they were, the flagship hunting club, and I just loved working with that organization. It was a sad day when they shut down. And as you mentioned just a little bit ago, I'm also co-host of Deer and Deer Hunting TV, which is on the Pursuit channel. It streams. They have it on their website. You can find it almost anywhere, but I really do love doing that show. Usually do about 3 to 4 hunts every fall, and pure whitetail hunting. So that really gets me into the whitetail mood, filming those hunts. Although we do a few mule deer hunts. They give me some leeway to do that. So that's basically what I do. I write, I blog, I co-host some stuff, do a lot of podcasts like this for different folks like yourself. And I appreciate you inviting me on. And I just love to talk hunting. Yeah. That's my whole life, the hunting life.
And you do have a YouTube channel, right? But that's not where, I guess that's probably not where your main energy goes, but you do have one. I just want viewers to know that if they want to subscribe.
Yep. They can go to YouTube. They can watch a lot of my old Extreme Pursuits shows, some tips and stuff I put up there. But if you want the latest little tips, what Mark's doing in the outdoors, and I throw my family stuff in there, I try to do a little bit of everything. Go to Instagram, Kayser Mark, or go to Facebook, and it's Mark Kayser, public figure, Kayser. Those two, I put stuff, on there every other day, every 2 to 3 days, every day, just depending on what mood I'm in. I also have an account on Twitter, same thing, X, excuse me. Mark Kayser. Look up Mark Kayser on X, basically the same stuff. So if one of those platforms is the one you like, you're going to find almost the same content throughout.
Yeah, I still refer to X as Twitter, even when like companies reach out to me or something. And I think they're starting to be like, "What is this guy's too old school for us? He hasn't caught on yet." But so you're living the dream, or I guess every guy's dream. But I know that once you live the dream, it's actually a lot of work behind the scenes, and I think people don't understand that. But I guess to start things off, well, where did your passion for hunting start? You can say any specific story, or it can just be like generalized, but where did that start for you?
I think like a lot of people, it's just in you. It's instinctive. So I always had this instinctive nature to be doing outdoor stuff and watching wildlife. I just really, truly enjoyed watching wildlife. And as a young kid, I probably should have pulled some of these out. I've actually found some old drawings, but I used to draw pheasants all the time. I grew up in South Dakota as a young kid. I lived in Wyoming. Now I've lived here close to 20 years now. Wyoming's home, but I grew up in South Dakota. So I just had this instinctive nature. And then my family, my dad didn't hunt. He did just a tiny, tiny bit, but he didn't hunt. My grandpa did. And my grandpa was somewhat handicapped, so he couldn't take me and do a lot of big hunts. But he was probably the big inspiration for me to hunt. But because he couldn't get out in the field, and my dad really didn't hunt that much. Almost everything I did was self-taught. I just kept trying different things, doing different things. My mom and dad, you know, back in the day, and still today with a lot we did with our kids, you know, you trusted your kids with firearms. It was a tool. It was just like, here's a saw, go build something. Here's a 410 shotgun, go out and shoot some gophers. So I had a lot of freedom with firearms, although I had good training. You know, I went to hunter safety. My grandpa taught me safety and stuff, and just took off hunting. And then what really sparked my hunting was I was a freshman, I believe, 8th grader, 9th grader in high school. And I went to a garage sale and I saw an old Fred Bear compound bow sitting there for sale. And I bought it. Didn't know anything about bow hunting, didn't know anything about arrows, nothing. And I pieced it together enough. And that fall, this was in the summer, and that fall I shot my first big game animal anywhere, white-tailed deer with a bow. And I'd rifle hunted a few years, hadn't gotten one. And that really, that was it. That Mark was going to hunt from then on. And I've told this story before, so if your viewers have heard this, but that night I shot that deer. It was dark when I found him in a cornfield. I drug him out. I put a flashlight in my mouth, and I opened up an old Outdoor Life book I had on how to field dress deer, and set the corn cob onto that page open. And all by myself, I field dressed that deer and got it on the top of my International Scout by myself. And drove home. Wow. So
yeah. I mean, I can definitely relate to that, being essentially self-taught, taught off of, for me though, it was more probably off of YouTube videos than like books and magazines, probably just due to my age. But yeah, I think that's a really cool story about igniting. It kind of like sounds like it ignited your passion. That's kind of how I was. The first big game animal I got on my own is really what triggered me into going into it 110%, and having that achievement. So I do think that biologically, I guess we could say, or I think I think most people have that, like you said, that desire to kind of hunt. I think, you know, we have that hunter gatherer in us. So that's pretty interesting. So what are your thoughts, I guess, on the future of hunting and, you know, the next generation, things like that? Like where are things headed? Are you concerned about that? Do you think we're going to be okay? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, like you just said, you know, everyone instinctively, it's hard to erase that evolutionary process in you to be a hunter or a gatherer. So I think if you would just take people out and they would open their mind up and you would show them hunting, it would turn them on real quick. The problem I see in the future of hunting, and that you may have had a little bit of issues with, I didn't as much growing up, but is access. Access is changing dramatically, and it's becoming a more closed environment. You just don't have access to private lands like you used to, unless you pay to play. You lease, purchase a hunt, you know, do an outfitted hunt or something. But I think that's going to be the big key to keeping the hunting heritage open. We've got to have places for these young hunters, new hunters, whether it's, you know, someone that's 35 years old, someone that's 12 years old, whether it's a young man, a young woman, whoever. We got to have places that they can go hunt. And these places, which are going to primarily be public lands and or leased lands, you know, Game and Fish will lease lands that are private and open to the public. But these lands have to have some quality to them. They can't just be, you know, bare pasture, a picked cornfield, a big sagebrush basin that's had 500 cows on it all summer and there's no grass left. They got to have some quality to it, because if a person is going to ignite that spark in themselves, the only way to do that is eventually they got to have a pursuit and they got to find some success. So if you just have run-of-the-mill land and there's no wildlife on it for anyone to hunt, whether it's pheasants, grouse, ducks, geese, deer, antelope, elk, it's just like going for a hike, and eventually they're just going to lose interest because they can do that without buying a hunting license, without buying a $700 rifle, without buying a $1,000 bow, without putting fuel in their truck and driving across the country. So I really do think that's the biggest thing. And I see it right here in my backyard in Wyoming. I see it when I go back to South Dakota and hunt. I really see it where I hunt in Kansas. That whole area in Kansas where we hunt has become not so much commercialized as much as just shut down, and fewer people are allowed on areas to hunt. So we got to make sure that access is there. And then mentor. I really think people have to mentor. One of the ways I've done it in the past is I volunteered for 4-H shooting sports, getting kids involved in shooting. And then, of course, Mark is Mark. So I talk about hunting while we were doing that. So when my kids were growing up, I volunteered all the time at 4-H shooting sports, even taking kids to the state match, doing stuff like that. And the winners, we would take them on a special trip to Colorado for another shooting event. So mentoring, and a thing that I've done lately in mentoring is getting rid of some of my hunting equipment. I've got a lot of hunting equipment that's 20 years old that I'm never going to use anymore. If I see a kid that wants it, hey, here's a couple of turkey decoys. Here's 3 or 4, elk calls. Here's an old binocular I'm never going to use. Just simple ways you can get youth and new hunters excited, and then hopefully we can keep some of these public lands not only building but managing for the best.
Right. Yeah, I've started to do some of that. I've been blessed just the last couple of years, and so I've outfitted a couple people essentially with just like, I guess once I've upgraded gear, I've just outfitted other people with my older gear. That's still very good. Just not the newest thing I bought, but that's interesting. I do think there's definitely issues with land access and like land that's being acquired or open to the public, maybe being not really good land, and people taking, or ranchers or different farmers taking that to their advantage, maybe in land swaps or whatnot. I think that one of the biggest hurdles new hunters have, in even more so in states outside of Wyoming, is public land access. Like the eastern side of the country, it's like they almost feel like they have to own land or lease land, and so that's a really big financial barrier for them. And I do think also if the land isn't as fruitful, then I mean, most people aren't going to go out more than 10 times, probably more than 3 times as a young adult, if they don't get something, or at least maybe have an encounter. Maybe they don't have to have success, but maybe they need to have encounters with whatever game animal they're targeting.
And so that adrenaline rush, they got to have the adrenaline. If it's just, again, a walk in the park, carrying a rifle, a shotgun, you got to have that pursuit charge going on.
Right. I know there's a lot of organizations. Was there First Hunt Foundation? I think that's one of them that helps young adults and teenagers get into hunting, and offers basically locals to take people on hunting. I want to say it's First Hunt Foundation. And then there's a whole bunch of first responder organizations essentially that offer, first responders, military, police, blah, 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 opportunities. But what are your thoughts also on, I mean, like CWD and the health of mule deer in the Western United States or areas like Wyoming?
I do have a huge concern about mule deer in Wyoming, and people have maybe seen that on some of my social media now and then. In my backyard, if I look out that window right up there, I bet you can probably count 20 or 30 deer right now just out feeding. It seems like in the private land fringes, mule deer seem to be doing okay. You see plenty of them. But I spend a lot of time in the backcountry in the mountains, and I have been just recently shed antler hunting. To date, I have only found 2 or 3 fresh mule deer sheds, and I have not found one on the mountain. And I've found several backpack loads of elk sheds already. There's just no mule deer up there to speak of. It's just a shame. And I don't know why. I mean, I do know some of the reasons why. I've studied the mule deer working group, read a lot of their research and stuff. There's a whole combination of factors that just come together for the perfect storm on mule deer. But I am worried about mule deer in the future. I see it in Montana where I hunt, Wyoming where I hunt, some in South Dakota, but mule deer just don't seem to be doing very well on the public lands, especially as compared to elk. Elk, man, they're just exploding everywhere. It seems like you see elk. Once in a while, we see elk right out my window right here. You know where I live.
Oh wow.
Just a few miles out of town in Sheridan, Wyoming. So, but mule deer, they're a very niche species like pronghorn. They rely on a very precise environment, and if anything changes in that environment, it really affects them. Elk, they lived all across North America, all the way into Mexico, all the way, almost the Arctic Circle, Pacific to the Atlantic. They were able to adapt. Whitetails, very adaptable as well. Mule deer, pronghorn, not so much. They really have a targeted little world that if anything changes, it can really dramatically affect their outcome in life. And as far as CWD is concerned, I've just never really gotten on that bandwagon. I just, as a whitetail enthusiast early on and now, I spend a lot of time in whitetail woods too. And I truly see the effects of epizootic hemorrhagic disease. That when that disease comes in, you see it, you smell it, see it. I've stumbled across a lot of deer, dying of it. I just really don't see a lot of deer deaths, mule deer, because of CWD or elk. They say it's an elk too, but I know it's there. I know it's real. I know the biologists and researchers, they feel it's a threat. But when I've been just immersed in epizootic hemorrhagic, over the years and seen ranches just fall apart and farms just, get wiped out overnight, I just don't see that with CWD. Do you? I mean, what's your opinion?
No, I don't know that much about either one, but I kind of take the stance you do. I don't buy into it 100%. I kind of think maybe it's been there longer than even they have known, and I don't see it as a huge threat. That said, I don't believe it necessarily should be ignored. I just haven't. It hasn't seemed to have a large effect on my hunting at this point, and I don't know that it's as big a deal as some people think. But I'm sure that's an unpopular stance with many. I just. That's kind of the stance
I believe there's bigger threats out there personally for mule deer than CWD. Yeah. But again, I'm with you. It should be monitored. I don't know if it should be, one of these huge managed thing like Wisconsin, Saskatchewan. They would have these big kill offs and stuff. I don't see that as the answer necessarily, but definitely monitor it. And I'm not so sure too. Like you said, I've always kind of thought that in the back of my head. Thing could have been here since caveman times. It's just,
I see we got some people watching. Just a reminder to the folks watching, we will get to your questions. Make sure and go ahead and ask those. We'll get to them. So we got Buck Wells, Devin, Steve from Wyoming. He's got a fishing YouTube channel that's really, really well. There's fishing guns and hunting, but really good fishing content. Leaf Binder, good to see you here. You're a regular. I did see one question. This is a good question for us to answer right now. What about the repopulation of wolves? I wonder what your opinions are on that subject there.
I'm not a wolf expert. I do. Again, as a writer, I read research all the time. I believe the wolves are going to repopulate themselves. They are all just like Colorado. Now is just dumping wolves into their state. And they've got the biggest elk population in the country. And we know what happened in Wyoming, in northwest Wyoming, when we dumped wolves there. They ate them out of house and home there. They ate the elk. There's no doubt about that. But there was a spike and a plateau there. Once they ate a bunch of elk, then the wolf pack started going down as well. I just think at this point, you just let these animals repopulate. Just like they're going to do it, let them spread and then manage them. But of course, everything becomes political. You know, it's just like grizzly bears. We could be hunting grizzly. They kill, I think the number is 20 to 25, 26, 27 bears a year in Wyoming.
Oh my goodness.
You
You're
know,
talking about grizzly bears.
Yeah, problem grizzly bears. They're killing a dozen or more. Let's just say that a year. Someone's getting paid to shoot them. Why are we not managing them better so those bears won't come down and get in trouble in the cities or going into ranches and such? If you just do a little bit of management, and then they're worried about the genetics not being able to meet from the northern grizzly bears to the Yellowstone bears. And it'll happen. Grizzly bears wander. It's just like the bighorns here right out my backyard. There's going to be a grizzly bear show up there soon. There was one in Montana not that far away, you know, was recorded here. What was it, last summer or within months ago? So I think it's wolves. Let them do their thing. Let's manage them and let's all live together. I've got no animosity towards bears, wolves, whatever. I think it's great. You know, that's what kind of makes you alive when you're out there knowing that. I several years ago in the bighorns, I came across a wolf kill that had killed an elk, and it was kind of just neat looking at those tracks, following the story up to where they'd killed a yearling, or it was a calf of the year elk, and same thing with mountain lions. Almost every time I'm up in the mountains now this spring, I cut across a mountain lion track because they're following the elk and deer herds around. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of them up here.
Yeah, we got a lot of mountain lions. I run into tracks all the time.
A lot of black bear too. At least that's my opinion. But black bear is right around the corner. At the end of this month is beginning of legal baiting, I believe, where you can set your bait out if you bait hunt. And then turkeys right now, I haven't even been out yet. I've been just talking about how I got to get out and find some turkeys. I need to find a place closer to where I live to get some turkeys. I go all the way to Story. We live near each other, so he knows what I'm talking about. But let's see here. We got some more comments. Thanks for having Mark. Okay. No problem. T3 270. I wonder if he's got a Tika T3, and that's why he has that name there. Oh, somebody's got to get back to killing. Yeah. Okay. My question is, I have a 70-year-old Remington, I believe is what he meant there, 22. That was my grandfather's, and about 8 years ago, the bolt pull on it cracked, and the guy I had replace it used a new slip-resistant lever. Hurt price?
It probably.
Do you understand this?
I do. He just had the rifle. He had a gunsmith fix the rifle, and they didn't replace it with the original equipment. And typically that will hurt the price, but at the same time, do you want to shoot the rifle? You know, and maybe there was no way to get the original. A 70-year-old Remington, it's not like there's just parts everywhere that you're going to find. So I would say enjoy it. You know, don't even worry about that. It's an heirloom. Go out and have fun with it. Enjoy it.
I agree with that assessment there. I'm looking through here real quick to see if I can find some more. We got Steve from Wyoming. Do you always DIY elk and deer hunt, or do you use outfitters or both?
I almost exclusively DIY elk hunt. Last fall, I did hook up with a guide in Arizona because I drew a tag I'd been waiting on for 18 years. So I actually believe I could have killed an elk there, no problem. It was just I work with a company called Worldwide Trophy Adventures, and they wanted me to team me up with this guide. So that's the first time I've hunted elk with a guide in over a decade or a dozen years or more. So I really don't need one, but it was fun. And I actually had a leg injury last fall going into that hunt, And I was a little nervous about packing an elk out by myself. Everything came out okay, worked out okay. My legs 90% probably right now, 95%. But deer is almost the same thing. Every once in a while when we're doing TV, though, it does help to team up with an outfitter just to speed it up. Because when we're filming TV, usually my window is 4 to 5 days is what the company gives me to have a cameraman beside me. So we want to be efficient in hunting. It's not like going up here on the mountain or up in the mountains of Montana or wherever and trying to knock out a deer. Because what I do a lot of DIY elk articles, and the figure I use all the time is it's approximately 8 to 12 to 14 days on average is what it takes me to kill an elk. DIY, public land, mostly in general units, not always, but even if I draw a permit here in Wyoming, the permit's not like these hot permits like I had in Arizona. That was a good permit, but so it's just hard. It'd be about the same, I figure, with the deer. You know, you're gonna spend 6, 7, 8 days trying to get that deer killed, and I don't have that much time with a cameraman. So my deer hunting mainly is with buddies who have land. And I've got a really good friend in Kansas we team up with and film some hunts there. When I can draw a tag, that tag's getting hard to draw. And same thing in South Dakota. I just meet up with a buddy. We hunt land he's got, some of his family land. And then occasionally we'll team up with an outfitter. So I hope that answers that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know from self-filming, man, it is so hard to self-film hunting and have the film come out well and get the shot on film. Oh my gosh, it's really difficult, in my opinion, anyway.
And some guys are good at that. I know a couple of guys that are just one of my coyote hunting heroes is a guy by the name of John Collins out of Kentucky. I follow his stuff routinely, and he self-films all the time. But his country's a little different. Like in our country, and you know this, Stephen, when you get on that sagebrush, there's a lot of rolls and folds, and coyotes can come from 360, and they're there an instant and gone an instant. So trying to film, you know, I'm going to turn around over here and everything. Well, the coyote sees that, he's gone. And elk hunting, I always figure on a DIY public land elk hunt, I'm going to get one opportunity in a week's hunt, and maybe one in 2 weeks. And so am I blow that one opportunity trying to film it, or am I going to make sure I secure a winter's worth of meat for the Kayser family by getting the shot off and then just doing So
I miss a lot of shots on film, self-filming for sure. I think now my last elk season was actually one of my, as far as out of my successful seasons, because not all have been successful for me, but out of all my successful seasons, it was actually one of my hardest. It was pretty difficult for me for some reason, which I guess Wyoming Game and Fish reported, though, that it was the best elk season in like history or modern history. How was yours? I think you didn't. If I recall correctly, you were out a lot of days. But I think because I just saw posts come up. And you were actually hunting yours even after I was done. So did you put in a lot of time last year, or how was that?
I hunted 9, 10 of the 15 days of what I was in the field. And the reason I as I get older, I feel like I get smarter. So when a big winter storm comes in and, you know, it's just white out, or those, you know, how that heavy fog comes down the mountain and you can't hardly see, those days I tend to take off. It's like I can, I'm hunting close enough to home. I can blow home, rejuvenate, get a good shower, get a couple nights sleep, and then back in the field. And this year, like you said, it was a strange season. It started out hot where I was hunting, and then it transitioned to, you know, horrible winter conditions. But I took off at the very end there. I timed it right. A storm was just ending. I was home during the storm, drove back late one afternoon, slept, got up 3 a.m, did my hike in, storm broke, moon come out. It was the prettiest hike I can imagine in a long time. I got up there, and a bull gave me just that much of a window to kill him.
Nice.
Just a nice mature bull. So
yeah, I'm getting a little smarter. Maybe, I don't know. I think I used to always just go through literally hunt right through the blizzards. Everybody'd leave the mountain. I'd still be up there in the blizzard. But after so many injuries and so many close calls and so many long nights, stuck in snowdrifts, it's like at some point the return on investment, so to speak, isn't always worth it. And I think you do eventually hopefully learn that. And that's kind of where I'm in the process of learning that, like, okay, it's just not worth it today. And it's probably, those days, they're probably not going to be successful either. And so you just learn that and you start to make better decisions.
And burnout in elk hunting, DIY public land elk hunting burnout is so real. And I lose all my hunting partners, even when the weather's nice. Day 4 or 5, they're bailing on me. They're burnt out. They're worn out. We're not seeing elk, their spirits aren't up. So I think taking those days off, if you can. Now, you say you're living in Philadelphia and you drive out to Colorado, you've got to do the 6 days straight or whatever, it's just no doubt about it. But another little thing I do, and I started this back in 2016, probably 2017, somewhere there, is I began, if I didn't want to hunt all day, I would always hunt hard the morning hours. I'm a morning person anyway. So I get up extra early, 3, 4 at the latest. I try to get in the woods. I want to be in where I want to be before shooting light and sitting waiting to hear the elk. And another tactic, and I write this a lot in my articles, is I like to start above the elk. Over here, I got to do it more. And elk typically on public lands work up. Not all the time, but the majority of the time they're down low feeding and they work up. So I want to try to be where they want to be and then catch them there. And then late in the day, if they're not bugling, not doing anything, or if I'm rifle hunting, I just don't have a good feeling, I go back to camp and get a full night's sleep. I just don't stay there till dark, because if you try to do early morning, stay till dark, get back to your camp, unless you're bivvying it or in a backpack camp and you're just right there living with the elk, those days are horrendous. And it's really me become, it keeps me energized and focused, and it's working. I'm killing elk, so I'm not.
I spent
myself.
Yeah, I've the last 2 elk seasons, or at least this last season, I spent 2 or 3. Like I'm talking out at 3 a.m. and then coming back after dark by myself, and I never came back. And I just sat out there like just dry snacks, and mentally it started to like just make me angry. Like it just, the middle of the days were so boring that your mind just kind of deteriorates a little bit. But you definitely have to pace yourself. I think that is an important aspect of it. I think when it comes to elk hunting, well, most hunting, but even maybe more so elk hunting on public land, it's like the one tip I always have is like persistence. Like if you can do one thing, you can screw up a lot of things, but if you're persistent, generally, I feel like you'll eventually fill your tag. Now, some people, they don't have the luxury like maybe you or me where they can hunt 10 days. They might only have 5 days. So I get that. And that's probably the majority of people actually. But if you have the time and you're persistent, I feel like generally speaking, you'll eventually be successful in elk hunt, at least on a cow or something like that.
And I tell people that too. My average hunt is 8 to 12 days. If you're going out west, and especially if you've drawn a premium tag, definitely block out the biggest chunk of time you can. So you can take a day off or an afternoon off. You can control that burnout and then get back into the hunt. And sheep hunting, elk hunting, some of those more extreme hunts, they'll eat you up. That's why when it comes early November and hopefully I got an elk tag filled, I love going to whitetail camp. And we sit in blinds and sit in tree stands, come back to the farmhouse in the middle of the afternoon, eat Doritos and watch ESPN or a movie or whatever, and then go back out. To me, that's just like, that's just heaven.
Right. Yeah. I think the weather, I mean, well, it depends where you hunt elk, but certainly like October, depending on where you're at, the weather can be extremely brutal as well. That's something I feel like for non-residents, especially, it's like, or even even a lot of residents, they under prepare, like with being prepared for that weather to come in and still being able to sustain a hunt through it. Even if it's just staying at camp, a lot of people, I think that's where they fail as well, where they kind of give up and they're not persistent. Um, Trying to look through the questions.
I teach that too. Pick the right camp. I mean, and I see so many people put their camp at 10,000 feet or 9,000 feet. And it's like in those October, the last half of October, like our elk season is, it's like, dude, you could just get snowed in there and never see your camp again. I mean, you can get 2, 3, 4 feet of snow overnight in some of these big, late fall storms. And so I really monitor that as well. And I have a mobile camp. I use my horse trailer. If it looks like I can get away with 10,000 feet or wherever, I'll camp there. But I'm watching that weather all the time, so I don't want to get stuck there. I definitely have backups down the mountain. I can go move my camp and be in a little bit better area.
Yeah, I've made every mistake in the book, and it took me 60 days of elk hunting to get my first elk. So and I got everything from Walmart, on clearance to start hunting. So I've definitely done everything wrong or self-taught to begin with. But I guess once you learn it the hard way, sometimes you don't forget it as easy, or you appreciate success. I think that's the biggest thing, man. You really appreciate any success, even if it's a cow elk after going through that. Last year, there was a guy I drew a pretty good unit. I'm not going to say what unit, but I drew a pretty good unit for our area. And, it for a lot of people, it might be a once in a lifetime thing from a non-resident standpoint. And he was a non-resident, and he just super nice guy. Nothing against him, right? Like I don't want to speak bad of him, but the first snowstorm, we had a good snowstorm come through early season, and he was camped near me, and I woke up to a tarp and trash laying on the ground. And I mean, he like fled for his life in the first snowstorm. I cleaned up some of his stuff, and I don't even hold it against him, but man, he was like scared because he talked to me the day before when it started. And it was like, he didn't have any of the right gear. He wasn't prepared, and he just like fled for his life. And I think he hunted one day on a tag that probably took him, I don't know, but we'll say 10 preference points. I don't know exactly, but a decent amount. And so it's like, man, if you got that kind of time put into trying to get that tag or money or it's a once in a lifetime tag, potentially, you definitely don't want to have that happen to you. So being well prepared is super important. Looks like Steve from Wyoming.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, he said Wyoming Game Fish said there was 29,000 elk killed last year in Wyoming. I don't know what the normal number is, though, so I don't actually know.
Honestly, I don't either. I know some of the success rates, and they really vary unit to unit depending on the private land, the outfitted, how much public land there is there. But like one of the general units I hunt here, never posts a success rate in archery season over 15%. It's usually 11, 12, 13%. And it's the same with another unit, a general unit I hunt in Montana. So 29,000 elk, that's a lot of elk. And I hope we can kill more someday. I mean, I hear all this. I hear all this griping. These landowners are like, "Oh, we got too many elk, especially in the Southeast." And that was a big part of the legislature this year. And then they want all these special, treatment stuff, which I understand it. They're eating grass, but the system's in place already. You and I and the rest of the people watching, we'll kill those elk, and elk are great meat. I mean, it's just a great protein to put in your freezer for the family. And we just got to find an easier way to get the public to be able to kill all those elk that are hoarded up on these private ranches that come late in the year. And that's a big problem. That's a huge problem. It happens, right out my front door.
Nice.
Hundreds and hundreds of elk.
So, and don't they get, or I don't know, don't they get subsidies or what do they call it? If they damage property, don't they get money from the government? No.
They do get some, but that was part of the legislature this year. They wanted bigger payments for elk grazing because the elk were grazing like cattle. So they're eating pasture lands. And again, I understand all that. You know, we're all in this world at this point to make a living, you know, whether you're ranching, writing, running a podcast, like whatever, you know, it's all money, a dollar deal. But at the same time, elk are owned by the public. We own them. You know, they're not privately owned. The land they're on is privately owned, but there's more than enough people willing to go in and shoot those elk. And if there's some system, and I know, you know, there's bad apples in every group, some bad hunters give us a bad name, just like, you know, people that are robbing convenience stores give me a bad name when I go fill up my truck there. But there's got to be some way we can work together.
Right.
And if you put enough pressure on the elk, you know, one day they won't stay there the whole winter. They'll move on, then they'll move on, and they'll move on. And little groups of hunters can be picking off those cows, the antlerless elk all winter. And it can go on all winter long. Why? I don't know why it can't, you know, where the game warden's out, you know, trying to manage it. But is there a reason not to shoot elk up until almost this point? You know, because we've got so many. There are almost in every elk unit in Wyoming, they're at objective or over. I mean, and way over in some instances. So
yeah, there's got to be a solution. I mean, not only for landlocked public land, which that's a whole nother can of worms, and the, you know, the destruction of ranching land by wild game. It's just, you know, I guess finding a way for us all to work together, ranchers and you know, non-ranchers alike. And of course there's bad apples. That's the hard part. And that's the part that always makes people, I guess, embittered too. That and probably money. But
if you're going to lease your private land out to an outfitter, then that erases it in my mind. It's like, that's not an issue anymore, you know, because they're not letting people on during the regular hunting season. And then the outfitter probably don't want people in there after the season because he wants it to be a little sanctuary all year round. So the elk always stay there. So there's a lot. There's just so many moving parts to this. But again, wildlife is publicly owned. Game and Fish has a plan in place to manage wildlife. We just got to get that plan working better than what it is right now.
Interesting. Here's a question, and I don't know if you don't have an answer, just, you know, say I don't have an answer. But monolithic versus lead core bullets, and why? Somebody wants to know here. I assume for hunting.
I don't know if I really feel good answering that because I've used both. I've used almost every type of bullet out there. So in fact, I shot my last elk with not this one, the one before with a monolithic bullet. And this past elk, again, I went back to a lead core, just testing a new bullet round. So,
well, I use lead core. So, I mean, and I don't, you know, I'm not worried about offending people. So I guess I don't see anything wrong with either one. Obviously there's environmentalists are more into the monolithic because they're usually solid copper from what I know in Alaska, all my hunting buddies in Alaska have gone, almost all of them are going monolithic because of grizzly bears. I guess they want better penetration, but that's, you know, they don't want the bullet to fragment or fall apart or, you know, whatnot, hold together better on a grizzly bear.
You know, in certain situations like that, grizzly bears, Cape buffalo, moose, and even elk, there are reasons for a bullet to stay together better and not splinter, obviously, and mushroom. But what I've found over years of hunting, again, so much of it comes down to shot placement and making sure the shot is true. And even when you feel like you've got the best shot opportunity, you know, things can still go wrong. So whether it's going to be the bullet or just the animal moved, you know, sometimes things can't be helped. But
yeah, what's your these like my channel is more of a gun channel, I guess, but I'm actually not as big into ballistics myself. I'm more in just like bolt action rifle construction. and how they perform. But what's guess what's your current favorite hunting rifle, or and down to like the model? Do you have a model you really like, or you're going to use this year that you are really looking forward to using?
Well, the one I used last year, I'm waiting on a new one, but I don't know if it's going to show up. So let's just put it that way. The one I used last year was the Bergara Carbon Ridge, and with the Cure barrel, it weighed 6.6 pounds. I wanted to get it in the 7 PRC, but just because of some manufacturing, I just couldn't get that caliber. So I went with the 300 Win Magnum. That caliber sounds big, but I use it almost for everything. And the reason I do is I feel like, I like Teddy Roosevelt, carry a big stick. I like that saying for one thing. But I start out with elk, usually in the backcountry, and then you're using that rifle, and I just get a feel for it. It's the same with a bow. Once I set my bow up, I use the same bow, whether it's for elk, antelope, whitetail. I don't change anything. It's just because I just like to have that. It's, almost mated with it. So that's the rifle I'm using. I had a Sierra, Sig Sauer Sierra 6 rifle scope on that in an a 4-18 configuration for power and a 4 objective, just to keep the weight down again. And I have been, even though it seems odd, I'm trying to keep that gun on a Nutrisystem diet, I do slap a suppressor on it, usually a Silencer Central. And I'm waiting for my backcountry, but I got a Banish 338 as the suppressor I've been using. Okay. I really like, I love a suppressor for everything now. And it's getting easier to get. I use a company like Silencer Central. Obviously, it's easy. They walk you through the steps. But I know the ATF has reduced some of the time now. Again, just in the last.
I heard somebody got one in 48 hours approved. Something crazy like that.
I've heard the same thing. So, but a suppressor. One of the reasons I like a suppressor, quiet, obviously, and when we're filming, I can talk to my cameraman, not have hearing protection in. But the other thing is, this year when I was laying there and that bull stepped out, and he only gave me, he really only gave me 2-3 seconds to get the shot off. But when I pressed the trigger, looking through the rifle scope, I watched that bull tip over. I knew I had hit him. And with a 300 Win Mag, even with a brake on it, but without a suppressor, you're going to lose that sight vision. You're not going to be able to see that. And I boosted my confidence right there that elk was down, because it was a thick timber. He just walked through a little opening and then down into some timber. So lots of reasons to use a suppressor, but
I got one. I got one for the first time November of the year before last, and is when I finally got one. And once you go suppressor, you never go back, I guess, because for hunting anyways, because just so many benefits. And then ironically, that October, right before it came in it came to the FFL or whatever, it's embarrassing, but I took 6 shots without hearing protection with a muzzle brake 6.5 RPM, and my right ear's probably never been the same. And I always hunted unsuppressed without hearing protection. And then normally not that many shots with a muzzle brake though, but that was like the icing on top. And then the next month I got the suppressor, and I was like, man, for one thing, I should have worn hearing protection, but for another, a suppressor, just because I'll be honest, unless I'm using something that's passive in an earbud style, I'm going to forget to put hearing protection on 100% of the time. I'm just always going to forget, because I get in the moment when I'm hunting, and I'm just going to forget to put it on. So now that I've gone trying to use suppressors on everything hunting just last year, it's just, I don't have to worry about putting hearing protection on. It's on the rifle, so to speak. And reducing recoil and whatnot. And arguably, if you do miss, hopefully you don't, but if you do, generally the animals don't really spook the same either, and you might have another opportunity.
And I had an elk low 2 or 3 years ago, and with suppressed rifle, he let me just finish him off right there. We just and the other bull, there was another bull standing right above him, just stood there, never ran anything. So, and another reason I like it is I have a coyote dog I use, and when he's with me, I don't always use him. I don't always let him go, out to the coyotes or decoy or whatever. A lot of times he just sits beside me until I read what the coyote's doing. And so when I shoot, and if he does stay beside me, it's not affecting his ears. My first coyote dog, she actually went deaf. Now, whether that was from shooting, being around an unsuppressed rifle, because back then I didn't have suppressor, I don't know. But that dog was, right before she died, she couldn't hear anything hardly. So.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I've actually never hunted coyotes with a dog before. That's interesting. I've seen videos of it, but so use SIG scopes. Do you have a special scope you're going to use if you get this new gun in particular? I'm just kind of curious as to what equipment you like.
Probably the same one, because that's basically their most compact one with the 18 power, the higher magnification. So I'll probably just set it up with that again.
On the Bergara, is that the Ridge Carbon Wilderness? Is that what they're calling it, or Ridge? Yeah. So is it like the Wilderness Ridge stock, but with the carbon fiber barrel? Is that the one you're talking about? I'm trying to get
it's got the pure barrel on it, which is the stainless steel carbon wrapped, and then the carbon is actually intertwined with stainless steel threads too for reinforcement.
Yeah. And you've seen good accuracy out of it?
Yeah, I'm getting under a minute of MOA off a sandbag bench with a bench that wobbles a little.
Are you using this? Are you using SIG's 190s out of it, like the SIG ammunition? Or are you reloading? I'm just curious because I have mixed information on those. I'm not going to start an argument over it. I'm just curious. I mean, I'm information gathering, so I'm curious what ammunition you've had success out of it with.
Yeah, ELDX, Hornady ELDX.
Oh, really?
Precision Hunter 200 grain.
Wow.
That's what I ended up. Now I was shooting a Bergara MG Light the year before, which is a chassis rifle,
right?
PR rifle. I like that rifle too, and that's my backup rifle. I carry that as if one would break, I got that in the truck. I can just pull it out.
Yeah. And folding stock, right? And
yep.
Yeah, and magnesium alloy chassis. So
yeah, some reason that rifle loved the 180 grain CX bullet from Hornady, the Monolithic. So I went with that, and that's why that question, which one do you prefer? I don't know. I've seen deer and elk just tip over the same with both of them. So I'm not I'm not sold on either one being an outperformer of the other yet.
How did you like hunting with a chassis rifle? So I've actually never hunted big game with one. I've kind of generally steered people away from them because of, I guess, well, in general, most of them weigh more. And then in general, a lot of them are so skeletonized that branches and stuff kind of can get caught in them and dirty and blah. The different reasons like that. Did you like hunting with it? I think that one has a folding stock, right?
It does. And that was one of the things I really liked. So in the mornings when I go in, and late in the day, if I'm coming out and it's dark, you're after shooting light, 4 shooting light, you can fold that stock up and then put it into, your holder on the back of your backpack. Almost every backpack now has a rifle holder with straps put on. And that does not barely, if at all, go above your head. So when you're going through timber, you don't have that rifle sticking up your catching.
Right. That's one of the biggest problems.
Take a can off too most time on a hiking in or out to reduce that.
Since I've started hunting with cans, I've kept mine on while actively hunting, and I've started to really have, I wouldn't say major issues, but obviously I'm like a flagpole and I'm hitting everything. And so, because I have some pretty long rifles I've been using them on. So I've been considering, after kind of being like, no, trying an ultralight chassis. I've never done it for hunting. I don't have one right now, but like an MG Light or a SIG Cross, or the new SIG, was it Sawtooth? The Magnum version just is coming out of the Cross, or something like the Fix by Q, although the price point on that one's really high, but something, ultralight because that ability to leave the can on, fold it, and then have that really short overall length. And the ergonomics on a chassis, I've always, at the range, as far as like feeling comfortable and shooting accurately, I've always loved the ergonomics of a chassis. I just haven't liked the idea of, maybe the weight or maybe a lot of ways branches could get caught on them when, but if you're cutting down the overall length, I mean, my barrel and suppressors getting caught on branches anyways with the more traditional style. So I guess I'm starting to reevaluate where I'm at on that, but
well, the regular PRS rifles, standard, they are heavy. They go up to 18 pounds or whatever. But like Bergara's MG, and now they got the MG Micro Light.
Yeah.
So, they're pretty lightweight rifles.
Oh yeah.
The thing that really freaks a lot of people out is just the feel. It just doesn't have it's got a standard pistol grip. I mean, it's a standard pistol grip, carbon fiber magazine, which I love a magazine on any rifle. I'll just say that. I'm not I just think they're so much easier to clear and make safe, and have an extra magazine in your pocket. And I've only needed it once, elk hunting, but when I did need it, I just pulled that extra magazine, slapped it in, and I was, shooting again. Where trying to feed it into, top down feeding, it gets to be a little hard or slow on a rifle. So I don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the market technology in the market, it's so competitive. It's constantly changing a little bit at least. And so like, I know when I first told people initially don't go hunting with a chassis if you're going like on an elk hunt, it was also because like there really was almost no options. And it was like the RPR, the Ruger Precision Rifle, at like 10, 12 pounds if you had it dressed out. So, I mean, back then it made sense. But now that there's just more and more ultralight options with folding stocks coming on the market, it makes sense to reevaluate it as well. So the ergonomics have never been the part that's bothered me.
My rifles are a tool. I don't have, I can reach in here and start pulling guns out if you want, but I don't have one gun in there that I can't just throw down on the cement and walk away. They're all Stanley Hammer type things. None of them are going to be an heirloom to and my son, his guns are the same way, maybe because he grew up under me, but I like guns that are tools that I can beat the crud out of them. I can lay them down on a rock and they get scratched up. I don't care. So to me, I just want function, and my function now as I get older is lightweight. I just want a lightweight rifle. I'm not carrying a base rifle that weighs 9, 10 pounds without the scope and ammunition and everything up in the mountain. I'm just not going to do it.
Right. Yeah. And I guess we'll close here pretty soon. Just like, I guess we can close with this question. Like, do you have a preference, or what would you recommend to people for Western elk hunting as far as a caliber, like 7 Rem Mag, 300 PRC, 300 Win Mag, like kind of a dual cartridge? What would you recommend for big game?
Well, I think it's hard to beat the 7 PRC right now. I mean, it just stands out for its ballistic coefficient, its performance. It rises above the crowd right now. That being said, if you're going to get a rifle and say maybe go to Africa or Canada or other places with it, a little more exotic, maybe even South America for red stag, it's hard to beat the 300 Winchester Magnum, because that caliber is known worldwide, and you can go into a sporting goods store in Johannesburg, Moose Jaw, wherever, and get that ammunition if you would need it. So I like that. But I really like the 7 PRC. That being said, I like the 300 PRC, and I shot a lot of my first critters over the years when I was starting out with the 7mm Remington Magnum. Those are my favorites. I don't like shooting stuff with small caliber. I do have several 6.5 Creedmoors, and I know guys shooting elk with them, and even the 6.5 PRC. I just, again, especially elk, and I think that was your question to begin with, elk, and a big Western mule deer, or a big Western whitetail. Those are big critters. You just want to hit them hard. What would you rather lose a package of meat or lose the animal? I mean, so everybody says, oh, it's just too much gun. For an antelope, I shot a lot of antelope with the 300 Win Mag. And it's like, yeah, maybe it is overkill, but I feel comfortable with that caliber. It shoots right for me, usually a 300 or a 7 or whatever. And okay, I'm going to lose a little meat out of the deal. But you know what? The critter's going down. It's anchored. And even if I hit it bad, they know they got hit with that. And usually you got a chance, especially suppressed, to quiet it. But when they get hit with a 200 grain bullet, 180 to 212 grain bullet, whatever, they're getting hit with a lot of energy, typically under 400 or 500 yards. So it shocks them. Plenty of time for you to work the bolt, get a second shot in.
Yeah, I recommend 300 Win Mag. That's my pick for that question all the time. I think I have shot elk with 6.5 Creedmoor, and then the more I've hunted, the more mistakes I've made, the more human you realize you are. Fatigue and environment and weather has a large effect. People shooting at the range is different than shooting an animal, obviously out hunting, and so the more experience I've gotten, it's like, nope, I want a Magnum for everything basically bigger than a whitetail. And I've shot antelope as well with a 300 Win Mag. And it's like, you can't get more dead. It's not going to hurt it. And you can if you shoot an antelope in the chest cavity anyway, you're probably not going to destroy any of the meat anyway. If it's a 300 Win Mag, it's still not going to destroy any of the meat more than a 6.5 or a 6 millimeter. So, and plus if you have one gun that you're using for everything big game, you're probably going to be really comfortable with that one gun too. And so that could also make you more confident, maybe you're going to shoot better, stuff like that. So I totally agree with you 100%. on that sentiment. So, but really good having you here, Mark. And I look forward to talking to you more in the future. And thank you guys for stopping by and viewing this live stream. Thank you to my sponsor for the podcast, Tuffy Security Products, and we'll see you at the next live stream. Have a good night.